He had to sell his late father's Harley Davidson, but Ozzy Osbourne made him a crazy offer. He wasn't selling a motorcycle that day. He was selling the last piece of his father's soul. The sign said $10,000, but the price carved into Jake's chest was everything he had left. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe to Voices of Darkness so we can bring you more legendary soul-stirring stories. If this one hits you, tap like and share it with a friend who needs hope. Jake, the debt, and the black Mercedes Los Angeles wore a quiet Sunday like a thin jacket. Sunlight pressed through a veil of high cloud, the kind of day that didn't promise anything except the chance to try again. Jake sat on the stoop of the little rental where paint curled off the railings like old scabs. Elbows on his knees, eyes on the for sale 10,000 square wired to the handlebars of a 1995 Harley Davidson. His father's bike. Bills fanned across the kitchen table behind him. Electric, rent, the credit card with the red font that meant final notice. Whenever the breeze slipped through the screen door, it lifted an envelope and set it down again, like the tide nudging a body. From a house down the block, Metallica's The Unforgiven floated out of a window and crossed the street like an honest confession. Jake let it carry him for a minute. He needed carrying. A car whispered into view at the end of the street, too smooth to be a neighbor's. A black Mercedes rolled to a stop at the curb, paint deep as piano lacquer. The rear window lowered. Long hair, sunglasses, that grin that looked like he'd tasted all the hurricanes in life and still found the salt sweet. It couldn't be. Ozzy Osbourne. The door opened with soft wealth. Ozzy stepped out slow as if he respected gravity. He passed through Jake's yard gate and circled the Harley, fingers grazing the tank the way a violinist checks the wood before a performance. Jake stood because not standing seemed rude in the presence of gravity and legends. Hey, 95? Ozzy asked, the corners of his mouth lifting. Jake swallowed. My dad bought it new. His voice cracked on Dad like the word had a hinge. Man had taste. Ozzy thumbed the for sale sign. 10 grand. Jake's throat went tight. Words wanted to be brave but came out true. Debts. Ozzy nodded like a confession had first right of way. He leaned a hip against the seat, eyes traveling somewhere he'd already survived. I lost everything once, he said quietly. The 80s ate men like me for breakfast. Woke up and the mirror was a stranger. Sold things I loved. Even a Les Paul I didn't deserve to touch. He laughed, small, human. But selling a thing bought me back a piece of myself. Priorities change. Life gets loud. You choose what's music and what's just noise. Jake didn't realize he'd been holding his breath until his ribs hurt. I'm not asking, easy. Ozzy's palm rose. I'm not here to hand you a bag of money and break your spine with the weight of it. He looked at the Harley again, then at Jake. I'm here to make you a deal. The word deal landed like a kick drum in Jake's ribcage. I buy it for 10, Ozzy said. Then I hand it back. 6 months. You pay me back, not $1 more. You sweat. You fight, you earn. If you make it, the bike's yours again. If you don't, well, you were already about to lose it. But this way, you get a shot. Hope is a thin flame. Even a legend has to cup his hands around it. Jake stared at the man who'd screamed to stadiums and was whispering now like a priest. 6 months. 10,000, a chance. His father's voice, the one recorded in oil and wind, stirred in his chest. Never sell your freedom, son. Freedom, Jake realized, wasn't a thing you kept. It was a thing you chased. He stuck out his hand. Deal. Ozzy's shake was firm and warm, the kind of handshake that says I show up. Call this number in the morning, he said, offering a card. We'll set it up. The Mercedes drifted off, leaving the smell of leather and the sound of a life pivoting around a new hinge. The 6-month war month one. Blisters. The Harley left on a flatbed that afternoon. The driveway looked like a socket missing a tooth. $10,000 fell into Jake's account with the clinical digital cheerfulness of a bank app notification. He paid the wolves first, rent, electric, the snarling red font card. The relief was immediate and unromantic. Then came the silence. 6 months starts now. The city is always hiring if you're willing to wash dishes when others are sleeping. Jake took a dawn shift at a diner, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., and spent evenings hunched over job sites on Craigslist like a gambler counting odds. By week's end, he had the smell of soap ground into his fingerprints and $78 stacked in a shoebox under his bed. He started a ledger in a cheap notebook. Saved today, $78. Left, $9.1922. He wrote it every night. Tiny victory flag in pencil. Month 2. Iron and Raina foreman with shoulders like an unkind season hired him for weekend construction. We pour at 5, finish when we finish. Jake learned the language of rebar and wet boots. He ate hard-boiled eggs on cinder-block thrones and slept on the bus, forehead bouncing the window in time with potholes. His ledger thickened. $105, $1,690, $23.40. He sold his TV. He sold the watch his ex had given him, which had stopped keeping time the week she left. He sold an electric guitar he never quite learned to play. He kept the plectrum. The memory weighed nothing and did not take up space. Month 3. The weather turns. By the 3rd month, he'd saved $4,500. The number looked ridiculous and tender on the page, like a newborn horse wobbly with promise. He taped a photo of his father beside the ledger. It was one where the old man wasn't old yet, grease on his knuckles, a grin on his face, sun at his back making a halo out of smoke. At the diner, a regular named Alma noticed how he wrote every night after close. "What are you always scribbling, sugar?" "A map," he said. "Home's on the other side." She nodded like she'd been cartographer to her own impossible continent once. "You'll get there." Month 4. The setback. The fall was small. That's how they get you. Wet plywood, a foot misplaced, a twist, then fire up the ankle to the knee. The ER called it a sprain and flirted with his wallet. The foreman said, "Heal up." The shoebox stopped fattening for 2 weeks. Anxiety is loud at night. It bounced off the drywall and multiplied. The diner owner, sturdy, kind, and allergic to speeches, said, "Front desk, sit, smile at people." It wasn't much, but it was dignity with a name tag. Jake's ledger limped but kept walking. Month 5, the tempo rises, he pivoted. He delivered groceries on a bicycle welded together from 3 bad ideas, learned to change a tire in 90 seconds, and discovered that almost everyone tips when you look like the last page of a book. $6,200, $6,940, $7,800. He cut coffee. He cut hot water showers short. He cut every corner that wasn't a bruise. The city opened at dawn like a steel flower. He moved through it with such purpose that strangers made room on sidewalks. Month 6. The knife's edge. The last month was a grind so pure it hummed. He woke before alarms, slept like he'd been dropped from a height. Fear camped in the margins. What if? But hope had moved into the main room and put its boots on the coffee table. 7 days out, 92 tens 3. Days, 96.20. 2 days, 98.20 final. Morning, $9,950, $50 missing. A canyon shaped like a coin. He stared at the ledger and learned how wide 50 can be. A text pinged his phone. "Bro, I owe you $100 from the move last year." "Forgot. Sending now." He laughed, a cracked sound that turned into a sober, grateful silence. The ledger didn't sing when it hit $10,050. It took a deep breath instead. The Mercedes returned as promised an hour past noon, the day holding its breath. A small truck followed, the kind that carries valuables wrapped in quiet. The door opened and Ozzy stepped out, moving slower than last time, the way anyone moves when the calendar adds weight to your bones. Jake handed him an envelope so carefully it might have been a newborn. Ozzy counted, then met Jake's eyes with something that looked like pride wearing sunglasses. "I knew you would," he said. The truck door rattled up. There she was, the Harley, clean as a promise kept. The chrome remembered how to catch the sun. Jake walked to it like a man walks back into a house rebuilt after a fire. "Your father would be proud," Ozzy said, standing beside him. "Not because you kept a bike, because you kept yourself." Jake wanted to say something good, something worthy of the 6 months he'd worn like armor. He settled for thank you, the way we all do when the feeling is bigger than the language. Ozzy's devilish grin made a cameo. "One day you'll give someone else a shot. That's how we keep the engine of this world running." He tapped the tank, then his own chest, the universal sign for in here. "Rock on, son." The Mercedes carried him away again, as if legends are allowed to leave whenever they want because they always leave something behind. Jake sat on the bike, turned the key and let the engine speak. The sound braided his father's laughter with a faraway arena's roar and the small, steady voice he'd discovered 6 months ago. Keep going. He rolled down the block, the city peeling open for him, and for the first time in a long time he didn't feel chased. He felt chosen, by the road, by the work, by the man he'd just proven himself to be. What freedom means, now. Freedom used to be wind and gasoline. Now it was showing up. It was clean plates stacked at 2 a.m. and rebar set straight at noon. It was calling a friend to say, "I didn't forget about the money you owe me," and hearing, "I didn't either." Freedom was a ledger full of days where you didn't give up. He visited the diner. Alma cried into a napkin without saying why. The foreman clapped him on the back, which is the construction site version of a standing ovation. The delivery dispatcher tried to hire him permanent. He declined with gratitude. He had his own route now, the highway, the city, the miles. At sunset, Jake parked the Harley in his yard and stood back. The sign was gone. In its place was a clean bar of air and a feeling that tasted like earned. He went inside and pinned the ledger to the wall. He wrote one last line under all the numbers: paid in full, paid in sweat, paid in soul. He slid his father's photo into his jacket pocket, the one that warmed with his body heat when he rode. "We did it," he said to the quiet. "We did it the right way." Outside, a neighbor kid straddled a bicycle too big for him and wobbled by. "Cool bike," the kid breathed. "It is," Jake said. "You like engines?" The kid nodded so hard his helmet squeaked. "Tell you what," Jake smiled. "You bring your homework by after school this week. We'll tune your chain. I'll show you how to keep a machine honest." The kid grinned like someone had just told him tomorrow was real. That night, Jake slept. Not because he was empty, but because he was finally full. On the calendar's far side, 6 months and 1 day from the return, Jake stood in a strip mall parking lot, staring at a yard sale table where a kid his age, a different, life wearing the same face, hovered over a busted amplifier and a stack of final notices that hadn't yet learned how to be polite. Jake saw the angle of the shoulders, the "I'm fine" mask. "Selling the amp?" Jake asked. The kid nodded. "Rent." Jake looked at the amplifier. He'd never learned to play, but he understood instruments that taught you who you were. He took out a folded card. The ink had his name this time. "I'll buy it," he said. "Full price." "But I've got a condition." The kid blinked. "What kind of condition?" "You keep it," Jake answered. 6 months. You hustle. You pay me back. If you do, the amp's yours. If not, I'll take it and no hard feelings. He smiled, something of Ozzy's grin catching the light. "Why?" the kid asked, suspicion wrestling hope. "Because someone did it for me," Jake said, "and because engines aren't the only things worth saving." The kid took the card like you take a lifeline, trying not to look desperate and failing in a beautiful way. "Deal." Jake walked back to the Harley. He swore he could hear a stadium far away. Wind, metal, 1,000 hands clapping sleep from their eyes. He turned the key. The engine woke. The day began. Freedom isn't owned, it's earned. You don't keep it in chrome or cash. You keep it in the miles you ride when no one is watching, in the sweat that buys your name back, in the grace you pass forward when the road brings someone lost to your curb. If this story found you at the right time, hit like, share it with a friend who needs a second wind, and subscribe to Voices of Darkness. We tell stories that awaken the warrior you've been quietly building all along. Ride brave. Live loud, never stop fighting.